Today, more than 25 countries representing all of the continent will be gathering for the International Conference of Information Commissions right here in Johannesburg. Among the issues on the agenda is the right to access to information, privacy rights, and the need to empower societies in the era of big data. It comes on the eve of our election of May 8. Well, joining us this morning for more information on this conference is Advocate Pansy Tlakula, South Africa's Information Commissioner. Advocate, thank you so very much for joining us in the studio.
Thank you very much for having us.
Now, you are bringing quite a lot of countries to South Africa. I believe 10 of them are other countries from the continent, which is quite important, on the issue of the access to information. But given social media, the whole concept of access to information has changed. How is this conference going to look at things like the right to privacy, the right to access information as citizens, and so on, in the context where nothing is really private?
Yeah, the information era these days is made up of two sections. There's access to information and there's data protection. Mm-hmm. And this conference in particular is looking at issues of access to information, how the right of access to information is central to the enjoyment of other human rights. Mm-hmm. For instance, you cannot enjoy your right to vote without the right of access to information. Social economic rights cannot be enjoyed if the citizens cannot access information that is held by the state. Mm-hmm. So this conference really focuses mainly on access to information. But one cannot talk about access to information in these days of big data, of artificial intelligence, without looking at privacy as well. But we have to be careful as well, so that we should not use privacy to sort of promote secrecy. Because I think what we have to put forward as the norm is access to information, openness, transparency, and then make privacy an exception to that.
Peter?
Yeah, look, I'm interested. I'm coming from this from a I know nothing about this debate and this movement, Advocate. When you talk about information commissioners, I didn't even know such a thing existed in this country. Do all countries have an information commissioner? Or have you simply created the sort of skeleton of what might become something more global?
In this country, the right of access to information was or is still supervised by the South African Human Rights Commission.
Right.
But to answer your question, in most of the European countries, countries of the West, they do have information commissioners. You have information commissioners like in the UK with Elizabeth Denham, who is like us, who has a dual mandate. Yeah. He has a mandate on access to information and on privacy.
Okay, Peter.
Just one more. So when we call you the South Africa's information commissioner,
yeah.
Is that misleading, or are you in fact?
The organization in this country is called the Information Regulator.
Okay.
It's new.
Does that exist?
It does. Okay. It's been there for 2 years.
And are you it?
We're 5. I'm not the only one. I just tell everyone.
Okay, but I didn't realize. I had no idea.
Oh, yes, we're doing that. We're still trying to set up the Information Regulator, but we've been quietly doing a lot of work with the private sector, in particular on the issues of privacy. You would know the data breaches that occur in this country, the ones that we read about with the liberties. And I always say that people don't know the number of data breaches that we have in this country. We have almost one every month or every 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm. I've got an interesting article that speaks to the conference that we can put up on the screen. It talks about the information or the importance of the evolution of access to information. And the intro is so compelling. It says, when access to information laws were first conceived, no one could have imagined they would one day be used to hold governments to account on topics such as social media advertising and cryptocurrencies. Now, we know, for example, we are in the the election period now, I get at least 10 calls a day from the Democratic Alliance saying the Democratic Alliance should vote for me. I've never given my number to the Democratic Alliance. How does this conference, when you talk about access to information and also the right of me to have to not have the DA harass me, essentially, every single day. How are you going to dial that? Yes. Yeah.
The conference is going to look at more broadly issues of elections,
yes,
access to information and privacy.
Yes.
And starting with access to information and elections, for us to have a free, fair, and credible elections, all stakeholders who are concerned with the media should operate transparently.
Yeah.
There is a perception out there that it's just political parties that have to be transparent. But I hold the notion that the media as well has to be transparent, because sometimes the media takes us around the bend and put up, you know, the notion of objectivity and independence, when in actual fact they promote or support one political party or the other. So in transparency, let everybody come out so that you know, we can all have information that will enable us to exercise our right to vote. So that's one side of it. But coupled with that are issues of privacy and issues that you have just raised. It's not only about political parties accessing private information of citizens for campaign purposes. I think we need a paradigm shift. The Electoral Act says that the Electoral Commission has to publish the voters' roll for inspection to look at issues of accuracy.
Yeah.
The voters' roll contains sensitive personal information of citizens. It contains our ID numbers. It contains our addresses. Their act also says that on payment of a fee, they can give the voters' roll to any person. So I think we are at a point where we have to say, yes, the IEC has to exercise a public function. They have to manage the elections. How do they do that in this era in a way that will not compromise the right to privacy?
Governments don't like access to information. They say they do, and they'll pass legislation like there's one, like there is here.
Yeah.
But they tend to be really reluctant to, when you ask them for a document, to give it to you.
Yes.
Are you on whose side are you in the general sort of argument between you know, more transparency or less, please? I mean, can we come to you and say, look, the government is not, we've asked them 3 times now for that document. We think it's a reasonable request. Can you help us?
Peter, I'm an access to information activist. For the past 12 years, I was the special rapporteur on access to information and freedom of expression in Africa. And I have pushed the continent to adopt access to information laws. That is why when I took office, I said to my colleagues, the general norm is information, access to information. Privacy has to be an exception. You can certainly count on us. You can come to me. And what is good about the act that establishes the information regulator is that it gives the information regulator enforcement powers, unlike the Human Rights Commission.
That's interesting. What enforcement powers do you have?
For instance, if you ask for information from a government department, and the government department does not give information, you exhaust all the internal remedies within that government department, you can then lodge a complaint with the information regulator, which will then investigate the complaint. But there is a tribunal, you see, within the information regulator, which is called the Enforcement Committee, that is going to be headed by a judge, and it can even issue imprisonment, fines, and including fines, quite heavy fines. For
what are we talking about? What kind of money?
10 million up to.
Wow, 10 million.
That's almost real money.
Can I come to you?
Not
to
yet,
ask
because what you need to do as the media, you have to assist us to push for the coming into effect, the full coming into effect of the law.
So it's not really a law yet.
It is.
It is.
Some sections, like the ones that establish the regulator and talks about its powers and functions, those powers, those sections are enforced, but the enforcement powers are not yet in
Well, good luck with that, because I think that, I mean, it sounds like a whole new possibility.
No, absolutely, because in fact, one struggles to get a document out of the Treasury. I mean, the Treasury is always celebrated, but they never release documents. In fact, they pride themselves that their documents never get released, and it's our public funds, for example.
You said something a moment ago that I was just fleetingly interested in. Do you think that newspapers and the media should not take sides politically during elections?
Yes, I was going to ask the same. Like the Mail and Guardian a few years ago said, don't vote for the African National Congress.
I once famously endorsed Bantu Olomise.
Yes, my point is that if they support a candidate or a party, let them say so. Let them come out openly. They shouldn't say we are neutral. We are let's know that Sunday Times supports this particular party, so that when we read, we should read with that in mind.
I quite agree with you. I absolutely agree with you.
Advocate Tlakula, there's so much to talk about. We will keep a keen eye on your conference. Thank you so very much for joining us and informing us that we have this instrument to actually hold our government and other institutions to account. Thank you so much for joining us. Next up, we take a look at some of the top stories that made headlines in our weekend newspapers. See you just after the break.